Welcome to Techiecast Jacks, where the top technology and business experts around discuss the latest trends in high tech. This podcast is hosted by Joe Holbrook, who's an experienced technologist pundit in Jacksonville, Florida.
Hello, fellow techies. This video has been sponsored by the Linux Foundation. If you really want to be challenged and you want to get certified and prove your worth in Kubernetes, then the Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam is for you. What is really nice is that this is an online proctored exam, and also you get to take the exam twice if you don't pass it the first time. It's a totally command line based exam. This will prove to your prospective employers or current employer or customers, whatever your situation is, that you know Kubernetes. This is the exam to take. Please click the link below and help support the channel. With that said, go ahead and click the link and get the best deal available for the Certified Kubernetes Administrator exam.
Welcome aboard, everybody. Joe Holbrook here on Techiecast Jacks. What I'd like to do today is talk about the top 10 cloud certifications. And the reason is because we're starting to see a change in some of the demand around some of these certifications. And what I'll do is I'm going to go through the top 10 basically based on two factors. Based on, first, the salary demands, and also on the demand requests that I receive around either teaching those, or when I teach, for example, on O'Reilly, I'll survey the students. And when you have 300, 400 students on a specific class, for example, you get a lot of interesting feedback when you do a survey. And so the demand for some of these certifications has definitely picked up. And I think also too, some are just old news. And now that we have some new ones, they're really of interest to, of course, to some prospective candidates, but also to employers as well. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the first one. Now, this is probably the one certification that I think is just never going to go away in demand, and that's going to be the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate. And this one here is just been in demand for quite a while, and it seems like the Certified Solutions Architect Associate is just that certification that is really, at this point, in my opinion, just a baseline. In other words, you need to have it to really have any credibility. And it doesn't mean that, again, you work with AWS or anything. It just means that you have a cert that pretty much everybody else has. So it really is a baseline. So I'm not saying it's not a good cert. I'm not saying don't go out and get it. But I wouldn't go out and get it thinking that you're going to have any real demand around it, because everybody and their brother has it. In other words, this is sort of like getting a high school degree at this point, at least in the world of cloud. Now, the Certified Solutions Architect Associate, for example, is certainly, again, from a trends perspective, like if you look at Google Trends, you'll see that this historically has been #1 for quite a while. And it's really meant to provide the candidate the ability to provide some kind of proof that they know how to design infrastructures in AWS and also deploy those systems and applications in AWS. So this is definitely #1. Another one that I think is going to always be in demand is going to be the second one here, which is the Microsoft Certified Azure Administrator Associate certification. Now, this is the MCSA. Now, this one here, of course, has been around a while and is still in demand. But the thing about Azure is, even though it's #2 in the cloud, it still is a wide gap between #1 and #2. And what I mean is with Azor, you can definitely, from what I see, and wide gap between number 1 and number 2. And what I mean is with Azor, you can definitely, from what I see, and the demand that I see from basically companies looking for candidates, is that it seems to be in pockets. In other words, if you're in certain regions, there's just more demand than any other. Some regions are just, soaked with AWS infrastructure requirements. Some are not. And it just seems to fluctuate. So I would say, again, if you want to go out and get a cert that might distinguish you from others, the Azure certification around the administrator is definitely going to be a good start. And also to the Azure Administrator Associate is usually a requirement for you to get more advanced certs with Microsoft as well. Okay, the number 3 that I'm going to talk about, and perhaps the number 1 cert from a pay perspective, and this is according to Global Knowledge, is the GCP Cloud Architect Certification. Now, I've been teaching this certification since day 1, since it came out, when no one knew what the heck Google Cloud was, or even Google Cloud didn't know what they were. And, no pun intended, they were still really just trying to figure out where they're going to go and, where their customer base is really going to be. What is their real focus area? Is it infrastructure, platform, or even software as a service? And I think Google has definitely in the last 2 years really gone into companies and started churning them over to get into more of the infrastructure areas as well. But with platform as a service, App Engine, of course, we know, for those that have worked with Google a long time, App Engine has been around since late 2008 or 2009 or so. So it's been around a while, but it was just App Engine. It wasn't, a whole suite of solutions like Compute Engine, Cloud Pub Sub, etc. So what I'm getting at is this is the one cert that I feel from a demand perspective outweighs all the others right now. This is really a tie from what I'm seeing between like the cloud engineer with Google and the cloud architect. So the cloud architect is really about you designing Google Cloud solutions, basically to help. And the thing about Google Cloud versus like AWS and some of the other providers, even like Oracle, is that Google really just comes off as a expecting you to be a developer, DevOps engineer and everything like that. So with the Google Cloud Architect certification, this one here is really not just architecture. It's really about knowing, some of the areas around DevOps and development areas, knowing how to put together some, Node.js scripts and just understanding some of those basics as well. And this seems to be a little out of the norm for folks that are, typically focused on architecture, pre-sales, stuff like that. But this cert is the most highly paid one according to the 2020 2020 Global Knowledge Salary Survey that was released, I think, in late January. And the salary for the GCP Cloud Architect was about $179,000 and change. So that's a pretty big jump compared to some of the other certs that are listed. So I think again, this is a good start, especially if you're willing to still take a risk. Google is number 3, and they're a very distant number 3 as well in the world of basically cloud consumption compared to AWS and Azure. So again, going after this cert could be a risk as far as time, but it could pay off. So I'm not saying it's not a cert you don't want to go after. It's just, again, just be aware that this demand is real pocketed still. It's more of a niche area. It's not like AWS where it's widely accepted everywhere. So just be aware this is where you're going to go with that if you do get a certification with Google. Okay, next up is the AWS Certified Developer Associate. Again, this is a big certification. Seems to be basically picking up in demand as well. This is more focused on cloud development, debugging applications. You definitely want hands-on experience for this one. The salary range for that was about 130, 140 or so. So that's not a bad start in a year, especially if you're new to cloud computing. So we have next up the Google Cloud Professional Data Engineer. So this certification is a little bit more niche area than the Cloud Architect in the sense that this is really about deriving value from data. And it's really a combination of data scientist, data analyst, and also Google Cloud Architect all at the same time with a little sprinkle of cloud development as well. So basically this certification is really focused on understanding data structures, and a good part of the course, if you take the course or the certification, a good part of either will be on Google Cloud BigQuery, for example, or Cloud SQL. Next up is the Microsoft Certified Azure Fundamentals. So this is really the beginning cert in the world of basically Microsoft Azure. This is really just understanding the basics of Azure. This is the starting point. The salary range for that was about 80K or so, or 82, I think it was. The next up is the AWS Certified Systems Operations Administrator. Okay, this one here has been around a while and is always in demand as well. Folks that can use AWS, manage it day to day is always going to be in demand, it seems like. No question about it. Now, when it comes to the SysOp, this is a hands-on exam. There's a lot of detail you need to know. How to use a command line, for example. This exam here, I think, again, just to break it down a few different ways, is really meant not only on the core skills around AWS, but also can you deploy, manage, and operate the platform? This is really dealing with support calls, but also managing it as a cloud engineer. So this would be very similar to like the Google Cloud Engineer certification. Okay, next up is a fairly newcomer to the list. Now, also one note on the SysOps Administrator, the salary range for that is typically about, usually I see that around 110, 115 a year, so it's a good start in life, no question about it. Okay, next up is the Certified Cloud Security Professional, Ccsp. This is by ISC. This is a really awesome certification. In the sense that if you already have the CISSP, this is like, a slam dunk pretty much. But basically with the CCSP, it is basically going to ask you to validate your skills and basically test your skills around security, design, orchestration, but also there's a fairly good size component, I want to say 10% or so, 12% of the exam is going to be on compliance and legal issues as well. This is a little different take than on the vendor certs. So this is really one of those certs that I see mandated by a lot of financial institutions, for example, if you're working on their cloud platforms. So again, if you want to get in the financial sector, fintech sector, or even some of the areas such as logistics, this is typically one of those certs that's a must-have. Okay, next up, definitely not last, but close to last in the list, but not so much per se in demand, and I'm going to explain why, is the Comptia Cloud Plus. Okay. So I have a little background with this exam. I've literally worked on the first Cloud Plus exam with Comptia. I was a subject matter expert, so I know this certification really, really well. And it's been out probably about 7 years, 8 years, somewhere around there, and pretty much been a subject matter expert on that for a while. And what I'm getting at here is that this certification is really vendor neutral. It is Comptia, right? Now, the big deal about this cert that actually made me sort of excited this year was that the Department of Defense finally basically added it to their IATA list. Their basically approved certification. So if you're ever in the government sector, this is a mandated cert. So the demand for that cert will pick up, no question about it. So that's a good thing. So the Comptia Cloud Plus certification is really just focused on, can you understand how to design a cloud at a high level? Can you secure the cloud at a high level? Can you deploy computer storage resources at a high level? It's vendor neutral, so it's not going to ask you how to do something on AWS or Azure or Alibaba or whatever. So that's really the main point. So the Cloud Plus is really a nice fit for someone really new to IT, for example, and just getting into the cloud. Again, and also too, I'll be honest, even though I have a preference to the Cloud Plus over like with Comptia, it's just a reality that you do need to have an AWS cert, especially if you're newer to the cloud. And the reality is that the AWS associate certs are really like a high school diploma. Now, the Cloud Plus is nice to have, again, if you're in the government sector. I don't see a lot of commercial demand for the certification. The reality is that commercial companies, they just want you to have the vendor certs. They want you to know that you could deploy AWS or Google or Azure or Oracle, whatever cloud you're working with. And the reality is again, Comptia certs are really meant for beginners. That's where they fit in. However, the DoD, Department of Defense, did sort of upgrade that validity of Cloud Plus and is giving some of their contractors and defense workers, military folks, some options. Instead of going out and getting another cert, they could get the Cloud Plus to meet some of those requirements. So that's the positive part about the Cloud Plus. Okay. Next up, and the last cert I'm going to talk about is the Microsoft Certified Azure Solutions Architect Expert exam. Okay, this is exactly what it sounds like. Basically, this is a very advanced cert in Microsoft Azure. It is their toughest cert. It's pretty much layers of different certifications to achieve this. And basically, again, this is really where, you've got that 5 years experience with Azure. You go out and certify yourself and say, yes, I can do everything in Azure as good as anyone else. So this is a highly rated cert as well. Now, the salary range I've seen for this is pretty limited. And when I say limited, doesn't mean you don't get paid well. It just means that I haven't seen a lot of salary limits or requests from companies on what they pay for someone with it, but it does seem to be something asked for. And typically the ranges that I see around, for example, an expert level Microsoft cert might be $140K, $130K, maybe $150. I've seen one or two up to about $170. And those roles that are above $150 are 99% of the time going to be travel and roles. Now, you may want to rethink that right now with the pandemic going on, and who knows how long it's going to go on for. But, again, it all comes down to, do you want to travel or not to make the big money? Because the reality is, if you're just sitting in a shop all day or a data center, they don't pay you very well generally compared to someone that does pre-sales or travels or PS, professional services. But again, that's really up to your call and what you want to do and what you want to tolerate for that matter. All right, so that's the top 10 certifications for basically 2020. And this is based on my experience, but also references from Global Knowledge and also Glassdoor and LinkedIn as well. Now, with that said, I want to wish everybody best of luck in your basically future round at cloud